our presenters take it from here. So Liz, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I'm Elizabeth Henderson. I've been an organic farmer since 1979. My farm was one of the first community-supported agriculture farms, and I've been active with NOFA ever since I started farming, because I found this community and people helped me become a farmer. Jen, you want to do a quick introduction, and then Brittany?
We could do introductions when we break out into our little segment. That might be easier.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Well, I speak to you from unceded Seneca land. I've spent many years since I started farming trying to figure out how family scale organic farmers can get a fair deal. Jim Cochran, who was the first organic strawberry grower in California, recently pointed out, a lot of people bash the farmer unfairly, but the farmer is getting beat up by the retail and distribution system. He's caught in the middle. The marketplace is rough on small and mid-sized farms. Produce farmers continually complain that we have trouble finding enough workers who are skilled and reliable. Of course, that is what the news tells us employers of all kinds are saying in this COVID era. While polls done by NOFA chapters show that organic farmers pay farm workers above the minimum wage, few farms are able to pay wages that actually allow employees to buy a house and raise a family in a middle-class style. Let's face it, family scale farming has been in crisis for my entire life, and I'm older than most of you. When I was born, there were more than 5 million farms. Today, there are around 2 million, and farms continue to go out of business, their land gobbled up by housing sprawl and by more aggressive farms. There are way too many obstacles to establishing viable farms for young people, whether they're people of color or slightly more privileged whites who lack inherited wealth. As a movement for a more just and sustainable food and farming system, it's our responsibility to come up with solutions, not just for the star farmers, but for the many other farmers who are struggling to keep afloat in the brutally ruthless capitalist markets as climate change, the pandemic, and unreasonably complex food safety regulations make it ever more challenging. I came to farming during a period when the farm crisis was very much in the public consciousness. In the late 1970s, farms were going out of business due to dropping prices, and there were dramatic farmer protests, including tractorcades to DC, to decry the decision of Congress to depart from parity price supports with supply management, the complex system that saved family scale farms from the Depression and ended the Dust Bowl. With the loss of price supports at parity levels, family farmers, especially farms in the middle, that is, farms where the farmers work full-time and earn their full living from the farm, suffered an overwhelming, crushing defeat that has cascaded ever downward to the rural vote for Trump in the last election. The policy of parity that had maintained farm prices in line with the rest of the economy was deliberately replaced with the policy of cheap food that we suffer with today. As Iowa farmer George Naylor explains, parity is simply a measure of the buying power of commodities over time, measuring the value of commodities in real dollars or inflation-adjusted dollars. And Catherine Anderson explains further, supply management and parity pricing directly mitigate environmental impacts by reducing the total volume of production. Importantly, supply management also indirectly improves agriculture's ecological footprint. Over my lifetime, this country has lost 4 million farms, 250,000 during the 1980s. Black farmers have lost their land at 5 times the rate of white farmers. In the organic sector, there are some family farms that are financial successes, where the farmers earn a middle-class living and can afford to make continual improvements to improve their farms. Most organic farmers, just like family-scale conventional farmers, are not making their full living from their farms. Their earnings from farming are modest, and they have health and other benefits because someone in the family has a real job off the farm. In 1979, when I chose to make my living, I wanted to find a safe, healthy place to raise my son, where I could grow food that I knew was free from additives. I wanted to find a way of life where I could be true to my values of care for the earth and social justice for the people who live on it. I learned that homesteading is a satisfying way of living, but I did not think that I should have to take vows of poverty to be a farmer. Acting on that conviction has led me to become involved in developing community-supported agriculture as a form of direct sales, and in doing policy work with NOFA to shape the organic label for sales through third parties. Dedicated organic shoppers, like the NOFA members who threw their energies into hammering out the standards back in the 80s, were willing to pay a little extra for food that was certified organic and could be trusted. They understood that using organic practices cost farms more than using the shortcuts provided by chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides, and they wanted us to be able to stay in business. That was the origin of the organic premium. The organic label has helped a lot of farms dodge the crisis of overproduction and low prices that plague farmers practicing conventional agriculture. The organic label has worked well for direct sales farms. However, for farms that sell ingredients for the food industry or who sell through third parties, like the supermarkets that dominate the food chain, it has been much more fraught. While organic transformed farming practices, it didn't transform the food industry. And the contentions over the procedures used for the National Organic Program reveal that the food industry threatens to transform us. The NOFAs and our many allies in Buy Fresh, Buy Local have done a great job for more than 50 years at making connections between organic farmers and the conscious eaters who want to buy from us. Through sharing know-how and discoveries, we have been able to build local markets and direct sales that in a few parts of the country amount to as much as 10% of the food that people buy and eat. The number of farmers markets has grown from a few dozen in the 1970s to over 9,000 today. And there are now something like 7,500 community-supported agriculture farms, although no one has the actual number. The organic premium that direct sales farms can charge, however, is limited by the low prices set by global food markets and the concern that we have as farmers not to sell only to the wealthy. But even where buy local has been most successful, 90% of the food that people eat comes from third parties of all kinds, grocery stores, food services, restaurants, etc. Farmers, including organic, face a hyper-consolidated marketplace. Increasingly, farmers who produce organic commodities, milk, grains, corn, processing vegetables, beef, chickens, we have few choices as to where we can buy our equipment or where we can sell. And the contracts include patently unfair clauses. Farmers cannot share contract details with other farmers. There's no time permitted for reconsidering. Farmers must invest in capital improvements that the buyer requires. And farmers are left holding the bag if the buyer reduces the amount purchased or drops the contract altogether. Basically, farmers have to take it or leave it. For fresh produce, there are few written contracts, even for farms with sales in the millions. Certified organic farms that sell soil-grown berries, tomatoes, and peppers to the big grocery chains could lose their contracts at any moment, undercut by cheaper hydroponics. As far as the terms of buying and selling go, trade in organic products is all too conventional. While the organic dairy farms receive a higher price than conventional, the farmer's share of the final retail price is actually lower than what the conventional farmers get. We farmers are price takers, and the contracts available have been written by corporate lawyers for the benefit of the buyers. And we're seeing that kind of corporate control play out in our region in the recent decision by Danone to drop 89 organic dairies in our region. Whatever its shortcomings, the National Organic Program has provided a label that has been useful for many organic farms. And NOFA has continued to maintaining the integrity of that label, though many of our farmers are adopting the add-ons for justice certification, the Real Organic Program, in the hopes that bringing up closer to authentic organic values will happen through this kind of pressure. So on behalf of the NOFA Interstate Council, I helped found the Agricultural Justice Project, which seeks to keep fairness, a fundamental principle in organic agriculture worldwide, alive in the US, since fair pricing, livable wages to workers, and respectful treatment of the workers were left out of the National Organic Program. Family scale farms have benefited from the legitimacy resulting from the National Organic Program, but ultimately it has not saved us from the farm crisis. As the Agricultural Justice Project points out, the missing piece from organic standards since the feds took over is fairness for farmers, fair prices, for farm workers, living wages, respect, safe working conditions, decent benefits. If we are honest, we have to admit that social relations in organic agriculture mimic those of the dominant industrial food system. And organic farmers, even those of us who sell direct in local markets, have a hard time making ends meet. So what will it take to transform work on organic farms into respected careers with livable compensation and dignified livelihoods for both farmers and farm workers? Let's hear from two farmers about how they deal with the tensions of wanting to pay their workers well in a cheap food system, and then have a discussion among all of us about what farmers can do to protect their own farms and to change the whole system into one where farm work is a preferred and dignified vocation with livable compensation, and farmers can concentrate on constant improvement in our farming without worrying about paying the bills. So let me pass the microphone to Jen Salonetti.
Oh, hi everyone. Let's just take a moment to digest all of that if we can, or just embody it a little bit more. Yeah. I find myself sitting with both aspects of a heavy heart and then just pure possibility. And I think that's something that I often balance in my work, and part of why I chose this work. So my name is Jen Salonetti. Welcome, bienvenidos a todos. It's a pleasure to be here. really honored to share this space today with you. And I'm going to go through a little bit about not the practices on our farm, but is specific to tending soil and care for the land, but more towards people and community. And I'll hold back on those just intricate details of how those intersect, so that we can stay focused on people today to a certain extent. So I'm gonna share my screen now. I'll go into an explanation of who I am, and let's see. Okay. So as I said, my name is Jen Salonetti. I am calling in from the unceded land of the Mohican people. And what you see here is an overview of what is known as Woven Roots Farm. We are a vegetable farm, a CSA, and an education center. We're located in present-day Tyringham, Massachusetts, in the Berkshires, the western end of the state, again on unceded Mohican land. So my work with Woven Roots Farm started at its inception with my partner 21 years ago, and at that time, I definitely could never have imagined that I would be where I am today. So I will share a bit of that process with you, particularly how over the last 10 years, we have expanded into a farm crew of 7 people at this point. And I'll talk a little bit about where we hope to be going with that as well. The land that we are farming on, the cultivated land is 1 1/3 acres, just under 1 1/3 acres. We're situated on about 10 acres of land, and we currently have 80% of our produce goes to our CSA community, and so or is moved through our CSA community. And I'm highlighting that, and I'm going to go into some more details about how that's evolved over time, because this current percentage of about 80% of our produce going to our CSA members through various paths of distribution, including on-site pickups, a partnership with a vegetable prescription program that Community Health Programs works with, or has an initiative. And then we also work with a distribution specifically to marginalized community members through a collaborative partnership with Finca Nunabujo, and they are located in the present day Cheshire, Massachusetts, north of us. So this 80% of produce to our CSA members has changed over time, and is part of what is really enabling us to achieve higher pay rates and opportunities of offering more to our farm crew. This little image here shows the growth of our CSA over the last, between 2010 and 2020. We started with 10 CSA members. We are now over 200 CSA members. That shift of going, and prior to being at that point of 200 CSA members, we were primarily working with wholesale accounts. And so while we do still have about 20% of our produce that goes to wholesale accounts that are locally based within a 13-mile radius of where we are, both community and family-owned operations, this ability to really work with a direct market and really create relationship both with the land and the people that we are serving has really been transformative for us. When we started in 2010 as a CSA, we had one farm crew member who actually still is with us, not as a farm crew member, but as part of the CSA, and helps with weekly distribution to stay connected to the community. And by 2020, we reached a total of 7 of us, none of us are working full-time year-round on the farm yet, but both my partner and I do not rely on any other income outside of the farm, and haven't for, let's see, about 16 years now. So some of the things that have changed, improvements, I was thinking about like mistakes that were made, and trying to put a positive spin on it. So improvements that have come over time have been, we initially, when we started with farming, we actually, and having field help, we had subcontracted help, and actually quickly learned that that was totally inappropriate. And so we established formal employment, which came, and with that came workers' compensation. We've really worked significantly to create efficiencies on our farm, and so we have our entire farming system is hand scale, and with a focus on permanent bed systems. And so we actually consider both the variety of the crops that we have to be an integral part to increasing our income, as well as the placement and the practices that we put in place within the fields. And so those efficiencies on our farm is something that I'm really proud of, and I'm excited about what happens in the field. I'll talk about a little bit more about our struggle later of and the opportunity to change some post-harvest inefficiencies. But I will say that being at a hand scale and being able to provide food to an average of 1,000 people per week on 1.25 acres of land, and employ 7 full-time crew members is something that I didn't think I could do. I didn't think that we would be able to do that 10 years ago. But the efficiencies on the farm, and then the relationships that we build with our farm crew, has really changed that, both our farm crew and our community members. So we have written agreements and documentations that we offer and provide, and expect our farm crew members to understand. We have increased our wholesale and our CSA pricing over time. The wholesale pricing was really done because of the intimate relationship that we have with the people that we wholesale to. We were able to have some very frank, just honest conversations about our needs, and the folks that we're working with really were also seeing that there were farms that were closing, and they said, we don't want this to happen to you, and how can we support you? So it was a conversation that enabled us to raise our price by 25 cents per unit, and that has helped significantly over the last few years. Let's see, we payroll services I threw in here. I'll go over CSA pricing in more detail. But payroll services I put in here because I really felt like that once I took that responsibility out of my hands and started working with a local payroll service, it was a way that I could provide and just streamline efficiencies to our farm crew, and and made the legal system of having people on payroll just become a huge relief for me. So I highly recommend it. It was something I didn't do until years later, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's been about 5 years now. Bonuses is something that we offer, and I am really happy to say that we have increased our bonuses over time. So basically, we are looking at the year end. We look to create an equitable distribution of any profit that has come in. I say equitable, but we actually do base that on seniority. And we have some farm crew members that have been with us for a long time. Our assistant farm manager is entering his 8th year with us. So there is some seniority to bonuses. We provide educational opportunities, both on-site and off-site for our farm crew members. So they have a stipend that they can work with, and then there's always room for further conversation if somebody comes across an opportunity that feels particularly meaningful to them and that they could share back with the farm. Weekly check-ins has been a huge improvement over time. We really, and even within our hiring process, we moved away from just being in that place of strain of we need somebody to help us at this time, and really have shifted our thought around just being in relationship with the people that we work with in very deep ways, so that there's always place and priority on personal growth and personal care. Collective care is a huge part of the success of our farm, and so we do that and provide space on a weekly basis for that, both individually and collectively on the farm. We also created an onboarding toolkit, which I'll explain a little further about. Actually, a lot of the components of that came directly from both inspiration and content from the Agricultural Justice Project that Elizabeth was speaking to. And that has been really increased like transparency and clarity around who we are and what we're doing here. And then, well, it's funny, I can't see the bottom. Oh, an annual pay increase is another component of what we've done over time that has definitely helped with retention, as well as helped us to increase our minimum wage over time. So, oops, sorry. So I touched upon the wholesale component of a price increase. This equitable sliding scale for our CSA is newer, much newer, but it has been already incredibly transformative for us. And so I thought it would just be helpful to break this down a little bit. There is information on our website, wovenrootsfarm.com, that talks specifically about our CSA and payment and pricing. So you can look at more details there. But prior to this system, we've always had, since the CSA started, a solidarity share fund. And so we basically were asking community members to make contributions to our shares so that marginalized community members could have access. And it was something that was separate. And while it was successful, and it, as I said, something that we were put into practice as soon as we started the CSA, we have found that this equitable sliding scale has really drastically increased how much more food we can make accessible to marginalized community members. And so as you can see from what's here, there is anywhere from 40% above market value to 100% off of market value. And the way that we explain our market value has really helped us to be more transparent about the true cost of our production. So this is language that we have on our website, that the market value reflects what we believe to be the closest true value of the share, and reflects the cost not only of the food itself, but also materials, labor, and production costs. And then we also just note as a benefit of a CSA member that, you know, we give that example of what the retail value of a CSA share actually is. And so those were conversations that we used to have with folks. We still do have conversations with people about it. No one has ever questioned it. People feel relieved and excited to understand some of these details more. They feel more connected to the people who are growing the food, to where the land is coming from, to their relationship as neighbors, because everybody has an ability to contribute and uplift each other within this model. And it's not it's done within a payment system, so that, you know, no one is particularly, you know, given accolades for doing more, which sometimes happens when people are contributing to like specific funds. We've been able, as I said, we've been able to increase our access to marginalized community members significantly through this process. So we're really excited about it, and I'm excited to share it with you. I touched upon the new employment document checklist. This is what we have. This is what we hand out as printed documents. We go over all of these verbally as well. And then we also have different resources that we provide. So some of these are necessities, as you would know, that have to be completed. And then there's other aspects of it, like a self-care worksheet and recommended book list. And then on a weekly basis, we are creating space for knowledge sharing. But this is someone that everybody starts with. We also have created an online document, an onboarding slideshow, so that people feel like they have some understanding and agency of what they're stepping into. We go through our farming practices, our values, our intentions as a community, where our food goes to, and it's a way that we provide a lot of visuals with that, so that we're, you know, looking to be able to meet people where they're at and provide different access points as an employee here. And finally, I'll just touch upon some upcoming improvements that I'm really excited about. One of our biggest struggles, I was saying that we've created really, we've really fine-tuned our systems within the fields of creating, you know, the efficiencies everywhere we can. And while we're always trying new things, we have a robust system that feels really good in the field. Our post-harvest production has been a tremendous struggle because we have lacked infrastructure for all the years that we have been farming. So there's a lot of wasted time and energy and ultimately dollars that are spent in washing and packing and sending out for delivery. So we are very happy to say that we are in a place of creating permanent infrastructure on our farm through almost all community support, as well as some grant funding from the state. And with this permanent infrastructure, we'll be able to start to offer year-round employment. We will have year-round CSA, because we'll have a dedicated CSA area that has some temperature control to it. We will have space for cold storage, so we'll be able to provide both storage crops as well as greenhouse crops throughout the year. And we will have a farm store there. We'll have a more formal education center, so that there's going to be opportunity for year-round employment in a way that we've never been able to do because of lack of infrastructure. We're also looking into open book management and creating a lot more transparency around our weekly numbers and monthly numbers so that we talk about it. We talk about it in check-ins and in our morning groupings for the day, but we're looking to create some more transparency around that through open book management. We're looking into health savings plans or IRAs, depending on what folks are interested in, as well as creating dedicated vacation time that can expand with the individual over time. So that summarizes some of the aspects of what we're doing here. And I think we'll probably take questions later, and Brittany can share next.
Yeah, Jen, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
The development of your farm has been just so inspiring and fascinating to observe. And when you think about it, feeding 1,000 people a week on 1 acre and 1/3, it would only take like 600,000 farms like that all over to feed the full population of this country.
Right. Yeah.
It's like it's doable. And I would just like to remind everybody who is participating in this, there are handouts for this workshop that you will find somewhere on the conference website. And the Agricultural Justice Project Toolkit are some of the materials that Jen referred to. So I put the link in the chat if you care to use it. Thank you. So Brittany, let's hear your story.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brittany Overshiner, and I am currently farming on unceded Abenaki land in Pepperell, Massachusetts, right near the New Hampshire border. But I have a kind of long journey to getting here. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to try to focus mostly on employment, but the nature of my business is that we've been in startup since we started 6 years ago. And a part of the reason is we had really insecure land tenure. So we started the business on a handshake lease that we were able to convince the landlord to give us a 3-year lease with the help of Land for Good, actually. And then we found out in 2018 we would lose that lease. And have been moving for a couple of years now. So we've sort of been putting a lot of resources into just getting established for a long period of time, which has limited our ability to focus on some of the things that we really value, which includes, really being on top of our employee policy and practices. Jen, I'm so inspired by what you're doing, and I'm grateful that you're willing to share the resources that you've been able to develop, and that's definitely one of the goals for our farm in the near future, is to take what we believe are very good intentions that we have around labor and turn them into clear policy. I'm going to try to advance my slide. There we go. So just the history, our farm, I actually managed the startup of a nonprofit farm for 5 years before starting Upswing Farm. So I've really been starting a farm for a decade now. I'm very tired from that and really ready to be in a permanent spot and be able to build from year to year. The one thing that I will say about the partnership early on that I learned and that I really hope to strive for is that 3 full-time farmers who are not all married to one another can make a big difference in sharing the management load on a farm and making the work-life balance reasonable. And that's definitely one of our future goals for Upswing Farm, is how do we bring in people who are in partnership with us at the managerial level, sharing both the risks and responsibilities and the equity that comes from that. I think that farm management, when shared amongst people who have built trust with one another, can lead to just sort of much more sustainable and lasting employment for farm workers. So sharing equity is something that we're strongly considering. There's a lot of text on this slide, but essentially it's just saying that we started small. We've always been a CSA farm. Our CSA grew as the farm grew, even though we were moving. And I had a son in 2017. So I've also been simultaneously raising a son and starting this farm. When we were on permanent land, we started with just full-time seasonal employees. And then we moved to having an assistant manager who was someone we had known for a while, who was paid a salary, of farm scale salary. So nothing that we, nothing that we should be super proud of or anything like that, but at least we had a salary. And we have relied on the fact that Massachusetts has universal health care. And so we and all of our employees have utilized the Health Connector and Mass Health for our health insurance. And this farm would definitely not be possible if it were not for that. My husband and I have worked full time on the farm since 2017 and have spent many, many hours, not towards production, but moving our farm, searching for land, applying for mortgages, all of those things. In regards to staffing, our labor budget has kind of stayed right around the 25% that if you talk to anybody from, sort of traditional financial management, they'll tell you that you're in the correct ballpark there. Everybody who's an employee is a W-4 employee, and we offer workman's comp. And I went back and looked at the numbers, and our average joint income, and I decided to share this number because I don't know what is fair, and I don't know what the right amount is for people to be earning, but they do post what farm managers make on job posts if you read them. So Kevin and I have made on average $55,000 a year combined. So our hourly doesn't look great, but we also have the privilege of being owners and managers. And so there's something to be considered there that we've definitely been able to make a living with that income and keep going on our business. But I don't know what that number should be. And I think that's something that's worth, what are we striving for? Like, what is a living wage? And then there is some equity. So we have been able to buy equipment that we could sell and make a little bit of money. So some things I think we do well with employment, our starting wage as of mid-2019 was $15 an hour. This year, the only employees making $15 an hour were part-time crew. Anybody who was full-time was making at least $16 an hour. And a part of the reason we do that is because we're trying to be as fair and equitable as possible, but it's also a benefit to attract quality employees. I feel like Eastern Massachusetts is unique in that there are a lot of nonprofit farms in the area and the cost of living is high. And I do believe that's pushing up the hourly wage in a way that is good for employees. So I feel to be competitive, I need to be offering at least 15, and really I'm feeling pressure to offer more like 16 or 17 as a starting wage. We work directly with our crew. We're definitely not here to go manage the farm. I'm in the fields with maybe more than I should be. I probably should be spending a little more time on management, but we work directly with our crew. We have like clear relationships with our crew, and we definitely work as a team. We are flexible and understanding with time off. Gave somebody an afternoon off to take their chameleon to the vet this year. We've been able to organize if someone had volunteering they wanted to do, they could not work on one afternoon a week. We acknowledge that work-life balance is real, and we deliberately work with our employees and are clear from the beginning of employment that the farm has specific needs. We can't be picking vegetables at 12 in the afternoon, but there are ways to manage a balance between the people's needs who work on the farm and the needs of the farm, and we work with our employees to make that happen. We're conscious of extreme conditions. We won't work if it's extreme heat. We'll try to work in cooler hours. We stop and rest when needed, and we try very hard to tell our employees that you are responsible for your well-being, and that we expect if you need to stop and you need to take water or you need to do something to take care of yourself, we want you to be responsible and we trust you to make good decisions. I'm not very good at modeling that. I'll push through and when I should probably not be pushing through, but it's something that we're working on. And then our employees report their own hours and they're encouraged to report very specifically, like to the minute. So make sure that our employees are not rounding down their time, just to make sure that they're being compensated for every minute that they're working. Things that we can work on. Because our farm has started small and because I have sort of been a part of every aspect of it, I believe I have a lot of room for improvement to let go and trust staff and give them more responsibility. I think a sense of ownership and responsibility is empowering and adds to the value of your job beyond just your pay. I think that we can do better in investing in training and also having clearer written policies for our employees. And we're growing, right? Our starting wage was $11 an hour in 2017. So we've definitely been making changes over time. Creating more space for input and more direct check-ins so that, we'll casually check in because we work so closely together, but making a more formal setting to check in, I think would be beneficial. And then I really want to create sustainable year-round positions. So one thing that we've done is our CSA has gone from, well, we've always been 3-season, but now we do a winter share and we have one employee who's with us through the winter and they actually live on farm. We were able to create some affordable housing, which we're really happy about. But we want to create spaces within the business for employees to either be creative and create their own enterprises, or at least expand what we're doing to create at least some full-time positions, because that's one of the hardest parts about, if you're talking about fair, I need somebody to work from May through October, and then I can offer you nothing for the rest of the year, and you have to figure it out. So as an employer of seasonal workers, something that I really want to consider is how can I create employment? What can I do to change my business to create more stable employment for my employees, which is a benefit, of course, to my employees, but it's also a benefit to the business because training is a really big investment, and returning employees are going to be they're going to be contributing more to the business because they're well trained and it's easier to pay a higher wage. So just thinking about programs to bring people up through the business, I think is something we can work on. I'm going to pause there, Liz, because I don't want to take up too much discussion time.
Yeah, that was great, Brittany. Why, what determination to have to keep moving and starting over again. You can't really build in a solid way until you have real access to a piece of land, some kind of continual tenure on that land. You don't have to own it, but you have to have real tenure. User-front. There was a question in the chat. Someone wants to know how many acres you're farming right now.
Yeah, thank you. So I didn't give the details. We, after about a 2-year process, secured 2 mortgages, one through the Farm Service Agency. And it's a zero, we didn't have to put anything down. It was a long process, but we were able to purchase an APR farm. So that's a farm with an agricultural preservation restriction. So it has no development rights. And it's actually 131 acres, which is more than we had ever thought about managing. It just happens to be the farm that made sense for us. So we grow on 10 acres vegetables, and we do primarily CSA sales. In the summer, we have about 400 CSA members. In the winter, we have 200. And then we do seedling sales and farmers markets to make up the rest of the revenue.
Now that's impressive. Well, I welcome people who are participants in this workshop to ask questions or make comments. Is there anyone who would like to jump in?
Yeah, I would. Richard Robinson here. Thanks, both Brittany and Jen. This is really fascinating. And I'm wondering, Brittany, you showed your own income, and I'm wondering if you see whether there's a path forward for you guys to be making more as you're increasing the wages that you're paying your farm workers. What does that look like in your future, and how do you imagine getting there, if that question is clear? Thanks.
Yeah. Well, in my 5-year budget, we're going to make $100,000 in 5 years. So if it all works out, it's like really comfortable. So I think a part of it is our lack of stability. Like I'd say we averaged to that 55 a year when we first started, but a part of that was I didn't take any income my first 2 years, 2016 and 2017, and I put it all into the business. And this year it's another startup year. So I don't even want to say how little we took from this year. A part of how we don't, it looks like we broke even this year, but a part of that was we just didn't really pay ourselves. But we have a place to live. I mean, honestly, like when I think of a living, I feel like I have a wonderful living. I feel fairly secure as long as we can keep paying our mortgage, that we can stay here. So it's a roundabout way of saying, I think a part of it is just building on stability and building efficiencies within our systems and improving our soil fertility. And I just think that, and building staff capacity, I think that it's not an unreasonable goal that we would be making $100,000 and we would have several employees making $20 an hour or more.
Yeah, I can say from my experience, actually, we're in a similar place of pay. It's around 55,000 a year that Pete and I make together. With that, we have, I was thinking about the assets that we have within our business, which have grown significantly over time. And I feel it's over $140,000 of assets within the farm, and it's about to change significantly with the barn infrastructure we have. And in a similar way, I feel like, we over time, we went from making, if we were lucky, $20,000 a year to around 55 now, and that feels actually incredibly abundant. And our needs are being met. Our farm crew does get paid more than we do. And so, I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware of the benefits that we have as business owners. And so, I try to take that into play and just think about the lifestyle that we have chosen, is filled with abundance, and it's filled with deep relationships with people and the land, and barter and trade, and just real collective care. And so without that, it could be totally unreasonable to be living on this. I shouldn't say could, it would be totally unreasonable to be living on this income. And I choose to, not have money. Money is an energy. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's a part of what we have as our life, but it's not the driving force of my life. And so it's sometimes hard to quantify, what is livable in that way. And I, in knowing that the system that we have was designed to keep us oppressed, and some of us more so than others, it's just so important for us to be considering ways outside of the dominant system to be caring for one another. And farming in and of itself within the capitalistic system is designed to fail. So And I feel like Liz spoke to that really clearly too. And so it's something, it's part, I feel like we have an opportunity as a
Yo creo que la
farmer
mamá, mira,
to
¿sabes?
be, within this paradigm shift.
Please mute
Um,
if you're not speaking. Please mute. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
One thing that is, I was thinking about some numbers that Brittany shared, which I really appreciated, when talking about the percentage of labor costs within our farm. Our farm is almost 70% of our farm over 70%, almost 70% of our expenses on our farm goes towards labor. And so that, we started at, I don't know, it was probably around 25%. And so that has changed a lot over time. The priorities of our farm crew and ourselves, has changed over time. And I see that being able to grow with that more permanent infrastructure, like I was speaking to. This land that we're on, it took us 14 years to arrive and to be, as much as I don't feel good about the word, but essentially having a mortgage here on this land. And so, even though we've been in business for 21 years, there's a lot of newness to this, and I do see our business growing in through the lens of education, through perhaps value-added products, but it's really important that we keep the production aspect of what we're doing in a viable loop. But yeah, I was just thinking about that income increase, or that percentage of being almost 70%. Basically, as our CSA has grown to being almost 80%, we now can look at our CSA as being the way to cover the costs of our farm crew with confidence, and we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that 5 years ago even. So that's made a big difference for us.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing all the details. I think that's very important that we speak frankly about it. And the story that you're telling, Jen, about what makes your way of life rich is such an important story for us to share with people. As in my view, the less money that we need, the freer we are. And the richer we can be in terms of our relationship with the earth and our food and our community and our neighbors. On the other hand, for the people who are working on our farms, who don't have a farm to live on, who don't have that, those surroundings, paying living wages is really important so that they can have a decent place to live, take care of their children, have a car to drive to the farm. If there's no bus service, which there probably isn't. So what do people think about what is a living wage? In the chat, someone pointed out that I had said somewhere that organic farmers are making $11.54 an hour. That was a few years ago. I don't think we have clear data on how much farmers are earning in the NOFA networks, but I don't think it's very high from what the two of you have just shared and what I know of other people. Almost everybody that I know has someone in the family who's working off the farm, and that's the source of the healthcare in the states that aren't like Massachusetts, and the source of other benefits. So what do people need as a living wage?
Great. There was another question on the chat actually that showed up there, and they were asking if your farm employees get to take a share home as well.
Yeah, definitely.
We have our farm crew has ample access to as much as they'd like, and we provide different moments of education around that. Pre-COVID, we were actually doing like more canning and things together, so that those skills could be shared and taken home. And And I think like some of those opportunity when when we can share of, like, for example, if I can barter for massages, then I extend that barter to my farm crew. And so like we all, even though, I someone else might not have that direct access, I will extend that. We have an ice cream barter with one of our local ice cream people, so we get to share ice cream, things like that, where it's like, where can we extend some of the privileges to access that we have as business owners to our farm crew as well. Because it's complicated. It's so complicated. I mean, even what's happened here where we currently live right now, I mean, in the last 2 years, the disparity has increased so much more in a frightening way. I mean, it just a really frightening way. And so at the same time, our equitable sliding scale is like the numbers of people that can pay more has increased, while the people that need the access have increased. And, so we're, housing is a huge, huge issue. Transportation is a huge issue. We don't have housing on site here. We're working actually with neighbors within our community to have conversations around, would they be willing to rent a room or host someone for a period of time? And people are showing up and wanting, our CSA members are saying we want to help, and a lot of it comes through us being more vocal about those disparities and the struggles to be able to care for the people that want to, live and work and learn here.
Those are really great ideas that everybody should hear about. And the importance of the sliding scale, Jen. Do you also take SNAP payments?
Yes, yeah, we do. Yeah, we find over the years that there are more people that don't necessarily feel comfortable accessing that or know how to access that. So it's actually been way more helpful for our community to just create this either an additional system or outside of SNAP and HIP.
Yeah, on our farm we had a sliding scale, and I know any number of farms who do that, and it's a way, Brittany, I don't know if you are using yet, of getting the people who can really afford to pay more, especially if they learn what you're earning and what you're paying the people who work on the farm. They will be grateful for the food that you're providing them. You're doing a tremendous social service and building social capital. They will pay more and enabling others to pay less.
I think that's a really good point, Liz. One of the challenges that I've faced with this profession is my product is a human right. Everybody deserves access to fresh food. Everybody should have as much fresh produce as they need. And so putting a price on it is a challenge. I can easily put a price on it based on cost of production, but those costs, when you're starting to consider what is fair wages, can kind of come into question. And so we implemented the sliding scale starting last year, and it really did help in our ability to create better access to our produce, both through subsidized shares and then donations. But I think you're right. I think it goes beyond just access and really thinking about extending that question of fairness in terms of labor to the people who are participating in the CSA and letting them know that if they're able to contribute more so that the people growing their food can achieve what is a living wage. I saw that Meryl just wrote in the chat, $22 an hour in Massachusetts is what people are saying is a real living wage, which sounds more reasonable to me. I think, and that's, I think it kind of begs the question of, we can try within this capitalist system to make these capitalist enterprises that we're engaging in, try to tweak them as best we can. But I also think like a universal overhaul of the way in which everybody is in relationship with one another and cares for one another is really what we need. I don't know how to make it work within this business without more support from the outside, I guess is what I'm saying.
Wilson has a really radical system that they've been using successfully since 1988 when they started, which is that they share the full farm budget with everybody. They consider everybody a farmer. They're the active farmers who are actually working on the farm, and the inactive farmers, who's everybody else. And they invite people to pay what they can afford. So they have a meeting where they get, this is the hard part, I don't know how they get all of their members together in one meeting, and people put in bids as to what they can pay. And if those bids cover the budget, that's it. So people are paying radically different amounts of money, and they can also take rather different amounts depending on how much they need. So I think it's a great example for people to reflect on. I don't know if we can all replicate it. But there's some great questions here in the chat. One is, here's an admittedly hard question, and I'm sure there's no easy answer. But do any of you have guidance for farmers who are still really growing their business and who have to choose between investing in infrastructure and tools that will grow the business profitability? And how do you balance that with paying people decent wages?
I chuckle because I wish somebody asked me that years ago. I wish somebody told me that years ago. Do I wish I had a solid answer for that. I mean, I can say one suggestion that I would make is to acknowledge yourself as an employee and put yourself on payroll, even if it is a smaller amount. I think when I first started doing this, I felt I was always putting myself last in terms of pay, and so I would just wait until the end of the year and hope that there was something. And so it has been different to maintain, even if it's a small amount, a certain amount on payroll. We have biweekly payroll, and so that has helped because money can disappear really quickly. And so just like making that little bit of prioritization, and then knowing that, I've been able to like consistently increase that from year to year has really helped. And there have been times like this past year, as I'm sure many of you experienced, it was just this unprecedented rain that we experienced in July. We had over 32 inches of rain, when we usually have 2 to 3 inches here. And so I did put I knew that we reached a point where it was like, okay, we need to pay our team. And, and so that was I made a sacrifice for us because I couldn't bear the thought of, not meeting payroll for our team. And so that being said, I was able to make that up later, but it is like, I don't know, I just try to keep, even if it's a small amount. That is one tip I can give. And another piece is that like and I didn't do this at first because I wasn't working with the amazing accountant that I work with now, but I also keeping track of what the personal investments are to the business. We actually have, a personal loan that goes to the business, and that circulates around. And essentially what we do is, and what I could have done better from early on would have been to keep track of all of that. I mean, we just gave every dollar, every bit that we could to the business without keeping track of it. And really, once I started doing that, I've actually over the years been able to, at least what was trackable, pay back, or, be in the
Nice.
process of paying back. And so like this year when, when I had to make a personal loan to the business, that was noted, and then I'm able to pay that back, and that's different than a paycheck. So keeping track of those finances, those inputs, is, even if it seems like crazy now, there is, I can say like 10 years down the road, that was circulating back to me.
And do you share that information with your employees?
Yeah, any personal loans, yeah, definitely.
There's a really startling suggestion in the chat. Does it appear that home real estate values abutting these beautiful farm resources have increased in value? So a possible tax on that real estate?
An agricultural land.
The homes are worth more. They should pay something to the farms that are bringing that rise in value. I love that idea.
I love that idea, along with all of us paying a rental fee to the indigenous people's land that we occupy.
So let's see. Jan from Rhode Island says that $20 to $25 an hour, a family of 4 in Rhode Island would be eligible for SNAP benefits, rent and heating assistance as working poor.
Yeah.
I have another question if I can ask one.
Sure, go for it.
For either of your farms, what are there levels of scale that you can imagine either getting to or coming back from that would affect your finances? In other words, if you grew to twice your size, Brittany, you've got a lot of land out there. You could easily grow to 10 times your size if that's what you wanted to do. Have you thought about whether there's a scale that makes more financial sense, or are you go 10 times as big, you're going to be facing 10 times the same problems, and it's not going to help?
From my observation, the people who seem to really be thriving with similar goals that I have in agriculture tend to expand a little bit and then contract and really focus on the ideals. And it doesn't seem like constant expansion actually is going to lead me in the right direction. Our goal really would be to, it's a complicated goal, but I would love to invite other growers and farmers of all different kinds to the land and provide an equity stake so that there could be additional enterprises here. Because I am not a fan of the hierarchical, like one person manages the whole farm and it all goes down, even though I tend to fall into that role. So I actually see, my goal is to never be cultivating more than 10 acres and in fact, improve upon what we're doing so that we can have more fallow within that 10 acres and higher yields from what we are cultivating. But I see a lot of opportunity for additional enterprises that could be contributing to, whether it's my employees or people who I'm in partnership with or just separate enterprises. Yeah, I don't see, I don't know what the precise scale is, but I definitely know that I have no ambition to scale up.
And it sounds like you do have an ambition to make jobs year round, and Jen is also trying to do that. And I think that's an important element in making jobs that are better for the people who are working on them, being able to work year round and have a steady income. Jen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think, thank you for that question, Richard. It's definitely something that I think about. And, our farm started as a quarter acre. On a quarter acre of land, we, both my husband and I stepped away from jobs and were working full-time off the farm on a quarter acre. And so we have scaled up quite a bit. to an acre and a third under cultivation. I think that there is room for us to get a little bit bigger, but we are it's really important that our quality maintains a pretty high level. I mean, we have a really good reputation for that, and it's also, we feel like, you know, the more intimate our relationship is with the land, the more, you know, beautiful and vibrant our product is. And so I get concerned about losing that quality if we were to scale up that much more. You know, the scaling up that we do is, well, you know, we've increased, you know, 30 beds, 30, 50-foot beds in a year. That's a big scale up for us. And so I am not encouraged by rapid growth by any means. And I think that, you know, where I see some growth happening on the farm would be to close some of the systems, create more of a closed loop system, you know, compost, for example. We do not generate enough compost on the farm. So I would love to be able to grow crops for compost. That would be an example of expansion, but that would also, but not in a way of not being too rapid. I don't know, and I also, I mean, to Liz's point before, it's like, I don't necessarily think that there's a need to have massive farms. I don't see that as the future. I don't see that as the success of a community. I've probably said this before, but I feel like there could be, you know, small farms, like we could have that every 15 miles, every 30 miles at most, and people, then we wouldn't have to be so strained by, you know, transportation and access in the way that we are now. And so yeah, the idea of getting big is not necessarily what I would rather be teaching others of how to do this than be getting a lot bigger.
I had the honor of being invited to Taiwan to speak about CSA and train farmers there. And the people who invited me had this wonderful vision of ringing every city on the island with the number of CSAs that they would need to feed the population of that city. So many, many small farms. And in the chat, Myrna observes that instead of expanding with one crop, diversifying is another way of, I think, increasing the resilience of your farm and expanding, but in quality, in intensity, rather than spreading out. I think we're coming to the end of our time together. And I want to thank both Jen and Brittany for sharing such great detail with us and amazing examples of integrity and persistence and creativity. Really, thank you so much. And I want to remind those of you who are participating that there are handouts for this workshop with ideas about best practices and how you can improve the productivity and the quality of the jobs on your farm. And the Agricultural Justice Project Toolkit has tons of resources on how to make your farm a more fair employer. So thank you once again. I think together as a community, we can build the new world that we need in the ashes of this world that is falling down and burning around us.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Jen and Brittany, and our interpreters as well, and all for participating in this. As Richard mentioned, too, very, very important thing that affects us all. And I want to be mindful of the time here, but there's also a survey on the chat. If you can't fill it right now, you can actually just save the chat. There's 3 small buttons on the chat there where you can click more and save the chat there if you want to do that later, but there's a link now there. You can actually do that there. I also want to remind people to let you know that there's a bulk order going on through NOFA right now. There's also our vendor marketplace and the auctions too that we placed links into in the description earlier. But again, I want to thank you all for this. Thank you very, very much to our presenters. And I guess I'll see some of you in the next 2 o'clock session.
Thank you so much to the interpreters for making
Yes,
this
yes,
possible.
thank
Yeah.
you for the access. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.